She would have been 6 years old tomorrow, but Brianna Lopez never made it to 6 months.
Her death was one of New Mexico's worst child abuse cases, so bad that police officers cried, and the DA was left speechless. Are children any safer today? Here's News 13's Kim Vyas.
This is baby Brianna.
They raped her. They beat her.
Massive bruising on the head, and then her little fingers were lacerated, toes.
She had bite marks on her face, cheek, head, arms, legs, chest, torso, everywhere.
Not all families protect their children. Some destroy them. Baby Brianna Lopez never had a loving family to keep her safe. She had monsters. Monsters who deserve to be spoken of in the same breath as some of the most vile criminals in history, Peter Scully, Mauricio Torres, and now the names of her very own flesh and blood. Because of these three cowardly family members, Brianna wouldn't even make it to 6 months old. Her life wasn't taken in an accident, and it wasn't swift. It was stolen piece by piece, a slow, drawn-out nightmare that ended in tragedy on July 19, 2002.
On July 19, 2002, baby Brianna died.
The day you went into that hospital and you saw her, what went through your mind?
I got a lot to do.
Detective Lindell Wright was the first officer on the scene.
What about when you did have time to sit down and look back?
Cried my eyes out. It'll stay with me for the rest of my life.
Investigators say Brianna's mother, Stephanie Lopez, father, Stephen Lopez, and her uncle, Andy Walters, were responsible.
What happened to her is so horrific, it turns the stomach. This is a case that will haunt you. It's disgusting, cruel, and one of the hardest I've ever had to tell. I'll warn you now, what you're about to hear will stay with you long after this story ends. But Brianna Lopez must be remembered. In the summer of 2002, around 10 a.m. on July 19th, a new mother named Stephanie Lopez called 911 from a mobile home. Her voice was panicked as she reported that her 5-month-old daughter, Brianna, wasn't breathing. Patricia Walters, Brianna's grandmother, was there too, listening as the operator gave instructions. While on the phone, Stephanie and the baby's father, Andrew Walters, tried to perform CPR on her tiny, fragile body until paramedics arrived. Emergency responders rushed in, took over, and raced Brianna to the hospital. But it was too late. At 11:10 a.m., Brianna Lopez was pronounced dead. She was only 5 months old. Stephanie told the ER doctor that Brianna had fallen from the bed around 3 a.m., but as soon as the medical staff examined her, they knew something was terribly wrong. The baby's body told a story that no fall could explain, injuries so severe, so numerous, that it was clear this was no accident. Amy Orlando, a prosecutor with the district attorney's office, still remembers that day. She told us over the phone.
The call that there was a baby that had died at the hospital and that it was suspected child abuse. So we knew pretty much while she was still, like as soon as she got to the hospital and they were treated her, the police officers were calling us, the detectives. The hospital doesn't notify us, the police do, but for them to notify police would be any signs of trauma or injury that doesn't make any sense. Bruising, and she was just bruised from her head to her toes, so they contacted law enforcement, and then law enforcement called us once the detectives got up there.
Warning: the details you're about to hear are deeply disturbing. They include descriptions of severe abuse toward an infant and may be upsetting to many. Bite marks are not the kind of injuries a child gets from falling off a bed. That fact alone set investigators on a deeper, more urgent path. A desperate search to uncover what really happened to 5-month-old Brianna Lopez. What they found went beyond the darkest corners of imagination. Even for me, speaking about this case feels heavy. These details have a way of lodging themselves into your mind and refusing to leave. But the truth, however unbearable, must be told. The autopsy revealed the horrifying reality. Brianna died from cranial cerebral injuries. Her tiny head bore multiple bruises and abrasions, evidence of relentless blunt force trauma. Within the last 3 days of her life, her skull had suffered a devastating blow that caused a large subdural hematoma, a dangerous blood clot pressing against her brain. She was also found to have bleeding in the membranes surrounding her brain and optic nerves, a clear sign that she had been shaken violently. But the nightmare didn't end there. Examiners discovered horrific injuries to her private areas. These wounds were not accidental. They were inflicted by someone who used her for their own gratification while she was alive, possibly even while she was dying. At least 15 bite marks were scattered across her tiny body. Brianna's skull showed 2 fractures from injuries sustained 5 to 7 days before her death. The presence of both fresh and older bleeding around her brain proved that she had endured previous head trauma that was never treated. Her small limbs told their own story. Bucket handle fractures in both thighs and in her left arm, caused by violent twisting and pulling. 2 ribs on the right side of her chest had been broken weeks earlier. The conclusion was undeniable. Brianna Lopez had been murdered. She wasn't even 6 months old when her life ended, a life marked only by repeated torture and pain. She never knew safety, never felt the warmth of unconditional love, never had the comfort of trust. Her short existence was one of fear, anguish, and cruelty. She lived in hell, and that hell had a human face. But whose? Brianna lived in a cramped trailer owned by her grandmother. In one room, she shared space with her mother, Stephanie Lopez, her father, Andrew Walters, and her 18-month-old brother, Andy Jr. A few weeks before her death, Stephanie's twin brother, Stephen Lopez, had also moved in, sleeping on the floor. Elsewhere in the trailer lived Brianna's grandmother, Patricia Walters, her partner, and Andrew's brother, Robert Walters. 8 family members under one roof, 5 of them in the same room as Brianna. During her police interview, Stephanie claimed that on the night of July 18, 2002, just hours before Brianna's death, she had 2 or 3 beers before falling asleep around 10 p.m. in the shared room. Brianna's father stayed awake with Robert Walters and Stephen Lopez. Even little Andy Jr. was reportedly present. The next morning, nearly 12 hours later, Stephanie awoke to find Brianna bruised, pale, and unresponsive. She called out to Andrew and Patricia before dialing 911. When she asked Andrew what had happened, his chilling reply was, "Stephen may have thrown her up." Thrown her up? Stephanie admitted that she had seen Andrew toss Brianna into the air in the days before her death, so high that she struck her head on the ceiling 3 times. She claimed she had told him to stop, fearing the baby might get hurt. She believed some of Brianna's older bruises came from those incidents. As for the bite marks, Stephanie said they could have been from 18-month-old Andy Jr., insisting she had seen him bite his baby sister before. But could a toddler really be the source of so much horror? Or was that just another attempt to hide something far darker?
The little 18-month-old that was biting her. But he ruled that out. A little baby couldn't bite that hard. Like, a little kid couldn't bite her as hard as what the marks were, and then also it was adult-sized.
During his police interview, Brianna's father, Andrew Walters, recounted the night before his daughter was killed. He said he clocked out of work around 5 p.m. and was home by 6. Later, at about 8 p.m., he picked up Stephen Lopez, bought a case of beer, and returned to the trailer. The 2 men spent the rest of the evening in the small shared room with Stephanie, Andy Jr., Brianna, and possibly others. Andrew claimed he fell asleep sometime between midnight and 1 a.m., waking briefly at around 3 a.m. to check on Brianna. According to him, she seemed fine, so he went back to sleep. At 7 a.m., he got up again, played with Brianna for a short while, changed her diaper, covered her with a blanket, and drifted back into slumber. The next time he woke, it was 10 a.m., and Brianna was in a terrible state. It was then that his version of events began to shift. At first, Andrew repeated the same excuse. Brianna had fallen off the bed. He also insisted that the bite marks covering her small body were from 18-month-old Andy Jr. But soon, the truth began to slip through. He admitted the bite marks were his. Then came another admission. In the days leading up to her death, he had thrown Brianna into the air multiple times, so high that her head struck the ceiling. He claimed Stephen Lopez had done the same. After a short break in the interview, police finally told Andrew the devastating news: his daughter was dead. He admitted to causing Brianna's bruises, though he tried to soften his guilt by insisting he hadn't meant to. "I didn't mean to leave a bruise like that," he said. "I've left her with bruises before just from messing with her. Stephanie gets mad when I do." Then Andrew spilled the beans, as investigators put it, describing what happened on the night of July 18th, the night before Brianna was pronounced dead. He confessed that he and Stephen had been playing with Brianna far too roughly, taking turns tossing her up into the ceiling over and over again, and each time her fragile head met the hard surface above.
They admitted throwing her in the air and letting her hit the roof and land on the floor, which is only half of what she went through. They were playing video games in the room, and all of a sudden they started throwing her in the air they were throwing her like a football. They admitted she kept hitting the ceiling and falling on the floor.
Andrew later admitted that during one of these so-called games, he misjudged the catch, and his tiny daughter plummeted to the floor with nothing to cushion her fall. Keep in mind, Brianna was only 6 months old. Even a short drop for an infant is significant, and she had endured more than one. When investigators showed him photographs of Brianna's injuries, Andrew coldly pointed out which bruises were from her hitting the ceiling and which were from the floor. He even acknowledged the marks on her skin that came from him. When asked how he comforted her after the fall, his chilling response was, "I just kept throwing her in the air." That's when the unspoken question entered the room, one that many people can't stop asking: where was Stephanie Lopez? She was in the same room. Her child was in distress, yet she claimed she slept through it all. Could a couple of drinks truly make a mother sleep for nearly 12 hours straight, ignoring every cry? It's a question that still lingers in the shadows of this case. Andrew claimed that whenever Stephanie became frustrated with Brianna, she would pinch the baby's ears or toss her roughly into a bouncy seat from a short distance. Remember, this child was no older than 5 months at the time, and we still don't know how long such treatment had been happening. The truth only darkened from there. When Andrew was shown a disturbing injury photo, his reaction was unsettling, defensive, even mocking. He made a strange claim that nothing incriminating would be found, then described a crude and invasive action he took in an apparent attempt to cover up what had happened. Meanwhile, Stephanie's twin brother, Stephen Lopez, Brianna's uncle, was also questioned by police on July 19, 2002. He said that on the night of July 18th, he was in the bedroom of the trailer playing video games with Andrew. Stephanie, little Andy Jr., and baby Brianna were also there. Later, Andrew's brother Robert Walters arrived with a friend. Stephen recalled that he and Andrew had a few beers before Stephen went to bed around 2 a.m., claiming that nothing unusual happened. But later, his story shifted. He admitted that he too had tossed Brianna into the air, causing her to bump her head on the ceiling, the very act Andrew had already described. Where Robert and his friend were during all of this is unclear, but 2 facts are certain. Stephanie was present, and if reports are correct, a toddler may have witnessed it all. When police showed Stephen the injury photos, he initially denied any involvement. Then, under pressure, his answers turned into, "I don't remember." Finally, he admitted to beginning an inappropriate act toward Brianna, but claimed he stopped himself when he realized it was wrong. His words, meant to sound like restraint, only revealed the depth of the darkness in that room. Brianna Mariah Lopez was born on Valentine's Day, 2002, in Las Cruces, New Mexico. She lived only 153 days before her life was taken, by the very people meant to protect her. She wasn't only harmed in the hours before her death. Brianna's short life was filled with repeated mistreatment. She was hit, thrown, pinched, and more. Her father and uncle reportedly laughed when she cried, and to silence her, they would stuff cloth into her mouth. On the day she died, her father committed one final act in an attempt to hide the truth. But tragically, this cruelty wasn't new to her. It was the only life she had known. When investigators searched the small trailer she lived in, they didn't find a single toy, not a single picture of her smiling. Even worse, her grandmother Patricia reportedly knew about the ongoing abuse, but did nothing to stop it. In the end, Brianna's tiny body couldn't endure another day. Her fight was over.
The nurses said that they let Stephanie in the room to go say goodbye to her. There was a huge bruise on, from the top of her eye all the way up to her head. They had her laying on the table, and she had a little blanket, kind of covering her body. Stephanie went in and covered her face with the blanket and then just said, "I'm sorry." And one of the nurses watched it.
The trial took place in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and by 2003, the verdict was in. District Attorney Susana Martinez pushed for the harshest penalties possible, life in prison, arguing that Brianna's devastating condition wasn't the result of a single night, but the outcome of months of unrelenting abuse. Her grandmother, Patricia Walters, and her uncle, Robert Walters, weren't charged with harming Brianna directly, but with something that still cut deep: failing to report the abuse or neglect. Both charges were misdemeanors. Even so, Robert and Patricia were convicted and sentenced to 5 months behind bars, but the courtroom would soon hear something far more chilling. When it was his turn to speak, Brianna's uncle, Stephen Lopez, confessed to the jury that he had committed the unthinkable. He even admitted that after tossing her into the air, he intentionally didn't catch her, dismissing it as just playing. Blood found on Brianna matched a stain inside the pants he had worn that day. The evidence was undeniable. The jury found Stephen guilty of criminal sexual penetration, child abuse resulting in death, and other related charges. His sentence, 57 years. Today, he's inmate number 5927, serving his time in Santa Fe's Level 6 Penitentiary of New Mexico. But the man who shared the most responsibility for Brianna's fate was still to be sentenced. Her father, Andrew Walters, faced nearly identical charges to Stephen Lopez. He received 63 years in prison. Once inmate number 559926, he was moved to Snake River Correctional Facility in Ontario, Oregon, after concerns were raised about his safety behind bars. And there's one detail that makes people's blood run cold. Andrew is eligible for parole in 2025. Both Andrew and Stephen stand at roughly 5 feet tall, weighing barely 100 pounds, a fact many believe leaves them little comfort inside the prison walls. Then there was Stephanie Renee Lopez, Brianna's mother. She was convicted and sentenced to 27 years in prison. For years, she was known as inmate number 59941, serving time at the Western New Mexico Correctional Facility. But in a decision that stunned the public, Stephanie was released in 2021 after serving less than half her sentence, granted parole for good behavior, with just 2 years of probation to follow.
An infant raped repeatedly by her father. The girl's own mother did nothing and received a 27-year sentence for not stopping the abuse. In October, Stephanie Lopez will be up for parole. Thousands of people have signed a petition asking the parole board to keep her behind bars. Members collected more than 60,000 signatures asking to revoke Lopez's parole.
Do you have any comment on your release from prison?
Only Action 7 News caught up with baby Brianna's mother as she stopped at a gas station in Los Lunas about an hour after being released from prison. Sky 7 was overhead when Lopez walked out of the lockup in Grants. Lopez spending just 13 years in prison after initially being sentenced to 27. A prison spokesperson tells us that she was sentenced under what they call a weak law. Under that statute, Lopez earned a day off of her sentence for every day she served. Jail officials tell us that law has changed.
Today, Stephanie Renee Lopez is said to be living somewhere in Texas. She's under strict supervision, with a tracking device locked around her ankle, a constant reminder of the past she can never outrun. Inside prison, Lopez had a reputation. Maria Perez, who served time alongside her, claimed Stephanie was quiet, caused no trouble, and spent her days leaning into religion, asking for prayers and redemption. But not everyone tells that story. Another woman who knew Stephanie behind bars painted a far darker picture. She said Lopez was skilled at reading people, and even better at manipulating them. When she first arrived at the facility, an announcement went out over the intercom. No one was to harm the infamous mother unless they wanted to risk extra years tacked onto their own sentence. But rules or not, some inmates still decided to give Stephanie a welcome she wouldn't forget. Over time, the anger toward her began to fade, not because her fellow inmates forgave her, but because she somehow convinced them she was the real victim. The version of the story that spread through the cell blocks was very different from what the public knew. According to that prison gossip, Stephanie and the two men had been using drugs the night before Brianna was killed and were crashing hard the next morning when the fatal abuse took place. This, Stephanie claimed, was why she slept through the horror. While serving her sentence, Lopez grew close to other women, developing intimate relationships. One encounter even led to a sexual misconduct charge after she was caught with another inmate in the showers. According to my source, Stephanie kept repeating the same line, that she was a victim too, and that Andrew Walters had forced her into taking drugs that night. But here's what's important to remember. Stephanie Lopez was never the helpless bystander she pretended to be. The morning Brianna died, Stephanie woke up to her baby's screams. When she checked, Brianna's tiny body was covered in bruises. Andrew and Stephen brushed it off, telling her things just got a little rough the night before. Instead of calling for help, Stephanie went back to sleep. When she finally dialed 911, she told the dispatcher that her daughter had fallen from a chair, a lie that would never hide the truth. The reality was simple. She didn't care. No one in that trailer did. Even in death, Brianna was denied dignity. Her family buried her in an unmarked grave, hoping no one would find her. But the community refused to let her vanish from memory. They found her resting place. They paid for a proper memorial. The family's response? They put a metal cage around Brianna's grave, a cold barrier between her and the people who finally showed her the love she never received in life. Still, strangers decorated it with flowers, toys, and tender messages, making sure baby Brianna would be remembered, even if her own family tried to erase her.
Brianna's gravesite attracted a lot of visitors from the public, so her family put up this cage.
I can understand them not wanting people to come and bother her, but I don't feel that it's bothersome to come here and, place flowers, teddy bears.
Well, the cage was put here to keep people out. As you can see, that's really not what's happening.
It's got some new Christmas ornaments.
Visitors have pulled up the mesh from the edges so they can put in stuffed animals and other mementos.
And people still do it regardless of the cage. The cage actually brings even more awareness.
Hundreds of thousands of people from around the world have petitioned to have the cage removed and a headstone put up. McCullough is part of the Remember Me Foundation, which raises money for memorials for victims of child abuse. The organization had this bench made for Brianna, but getting it put in wasn't easy.
The family didn't want anything here, and so the cemetery was backing their wishes.
After months of work and help from the district attorney's office, the bench was finally put in. The plaques were added on this week. McCullough says it's at least one step towards giving Brianna the resting place she deserved.
Why was little Brianna treated with such unimaginable cruelty? It's a question that has never truly been answered. But I have a theory. Some reports and personal accounts suggest that Andrew may have been in prison around the time Stephanie became pregnant with Brianna. This led to whispers, the possibility that Stephanie may have been involved with someone else. While that doesn't excuse the horror that followed, it could explain the deep resentment that seemed to surround this innocent baby from the very beginning. But in the end, a test confirmed the truth. Brianna was indeed Andrew's daughter. Inside that small trailer, everyone, except for the young boy, carried some level of responsibility for what happened to Brianna Lopez, some more than others. But the three individuals who directly allowed her life to be taken in such a devastating way should never again walk free. They should live every day knowing what they did, unable to escape the weight of it. So how could anyone even consider granting them parole? May we always remember Brianna's name and never forget the faces of those who ended her short, painful life. Stephen, Andrew, Stephanie. We will not forget, and we will make sure you remember too. I've started a petition to ensure Andrew Walters remains behind bars and to urge the 2025 Parole Board not to fail Brianna when the time for their decision comes. The petition link is in the description and pinned comment. Will it stop his release? Probably not, but it will show where you stand and that Brianna's story will not be silenced. I'm Mr. Black, and this is The Disturbing Truth.
For the life of a child, I thought it was absurd.
State Senator Mary Jane Garcia helped change the law, increasing the punishment to a mandatory life sentence for the crime of child abuse resulting in death. But former Doña Ana County DA, Susana Martinez, felt that the new law would only be adequate if judges actually utilize maximum penalties in their verdicts. At the time Brianna's law was passed, Garcia and Martinez still felt that those who failed to report abuse should be held accountable by way of stricter penalties and harsher sentences.
Those two individuals knew she was being abused. She was full of bruises that were old, green, brown, yellow color. Had they reported it early, had they insisted on that child not being abused, maybe we would have never had her death take place.
State Senator Mary Jane Garcia fought to change the law, ensuring that anyone convicted of child abuse resulting in death would face a mandatory life sentence. But for former Doña Ana County District Attorney Susana Martinez, this was only part of the solution. She believed the law would only truly matter if judges had the courage to hand down the maximum penalties every single time. When Brianna's law was finally passed, both Garcia and Martinez knew their work wasn't over. They still believed that anyone who failed to report abuse should face stricter penalties and harsher sentences, because too often, silence can be just as deadly as the crime itself.
Letting her hit the roof and land on the floor, which is only half of what she went through. They were playing video games in the room, and all of a sudden they started throwing her in the air like they were throwing her like a football. They admitted she kept hitting the ceiling and falling on the floor. When they first got to the hospital, they tried to claim that the bruise happened while she was at the hospital. But then when they started giving statements, then they all started, having to say that, yeah, she was being thrown in the air. And then at one point, Stephen also had the CSP on her. He at some point took her in another room supposedly to change her diapers, but when the nursing staff noticed her, so then he admitted that he had stuck fingers in there really rough. We think he had done more. So he was also charged with CSP. So maybe that's another reason they might have had to isolate him more. And if you're isolated, you don't get as much credit. Yeah, I mean, Stephanie admitted that she would pinch hers because she'd get frustrated with her and pull them. But how do you be a mother and watch that? We know that, as crazy as it sounds, the other ones are grandma and other uncle, because you can't be in a house with a child and have that going on and not know about it. So, the real hatred, evil people are the ones doing it, but you also have the evilness of letting it happen under your watch and under your home. And they clearly knew how to take care of Andy Jr., but why do we not give one sentence for every child that dies? And then, like I said, you could have a little bit of varying degrees of it, but there shouldn't be this. But they did it because the defense attorneys and our legislature is a voluntary legislature. They technically don't get paid for doing this. They get paid plenty, but they don't have a salary. They're not year-round legislators. All of our legislators that deal with the criminal law and the legislation that relates to criminal justice is defense attorneys. So there's always a but. And if you just search a little bit of the laws we've tried to pass to protect our community, not just child abuse cases, but DWIs, anything, it gets shut down because the majority of the ones that are voting that care about these kind of cases are defense attorneys. I'm so thankful we have it. I'm very proud that we have what we have, but it's not effective.